Hello everyone, and this is our visual Atwood guide. This is our guide to the voice of the Handmaid's Tale, and we will be explaining what writers do and how they use different effects on the audience. These are our symbols: amplify, magnify, evoke, applaud, anchor, expand, and summarize.
So the first aspect of The Handmaid's Tale we're going to be exploring is the dystopian and speculative fiction. Okay, so the fact that the book is a dystopian and speculative fiction novel is that it enforces women and gender roles, and it compares and contrasts gender roles in the past and in the new regime. So it focuses on women's place in the home, and also how women prefer the company of other women. So this makes the audience, and in specific women, wonder what will be expected of them in the future, and this evokes their mental thought when reading the novel. Gilead also represents a society where extreme political and social ideas are explored, and this overall provokes the audience to think about what will happen if political and social ideas are taken to new extremes, and further expand their ideas.
It is told in the present tense. It gives the novel a very current and in-the-moment feeling. This makes the audience feel like Offred is currently in Gilead and experiencing the things she is speaking about. Offred's name can be interpreted in many different ways. First of all, Fred. Fred is her commander's name, makes it seem as if she is owned by him. This makes the audience sympathize for Offred, as they may feel bad for Offred as she is being portrayed as an object. Second, offered. She is offering herself to the society. However, this is quite ironic as she is not really offering herself, but instead she's being told what to do. This has a similar effect on the audience as satire, as this interpretation of her name is ironic. It also makes the audience question the morals of the regime and what they are asking from the women.
The third way which her name could be interpreted is of red, and that's because red is a significant color throughout the novel. The handmaids have to wear red dresses which cover all of their bodies, so this is reference to the female reproductive system. It also symbolizes fertility, menstrual cycle, and childbirth, and passion, her love for Nick. So these different interpretations of her name allow the audience to see how many different aspects of life Offred represents: fertility, love, ownership, sexism, etc. However, at the end, when we find out that Offred is telling her story after being taken away, this allows the audience to personally connect to Offred, as the topics she speaks about are sensitive, which therefore evoke emotion and sympathy from the audience.
The next genre we're going to be talking about is metafiction. While the audience is reading the story, they don't know that it's actually Offred retelling her story, and that these recordings of Offred telling the story have been found and investigated by her professor. This can connect to the historical notes of the Handmaid's Tale. This revelation at the end of the novel allows the audience to reinterpret the novel as a whole, allowing them to summarise everything that has occurred and get a better understanding of the novel. Therefore, it summarizes and reinforces the whole metaphor of the book because it's not an actual story, it's the thoughts of Offred and her ideas. The next genre is satire. By exploring issues present in today's society through satire, Atwood is able to criticise the issues of gender inequalities, unchallenged misogyny, mass commercialisation, and environmental disasters.
So the first aspect of satire that we're going to be looking at is gender inequalities and how women are treated like objects and they're only used for having children. And this links to the classes of women and how some women are more privileged in the respect of not being on women. And it's satirical because Atwood makes it seem like Offred should be pleased and relieved that she is a handmaid, even though it's not something that she should be pleased with. Gender inequality has been an ongoing issue and is present even now in society, which allowed Atwood to criticize gender inequality back in the 1980s when she was writing the novel, but it also allows the same issues to be criticized even today, 30 years after it was written. Overall, this allows the audience to sympathize for women in general, but more specifically for Offred. The next aspect of satire is unchallenged misogyny, which is also the oppression of women. So although there's no physical abuse of women, there is misogyny occurring in the novel, and it's unchallenged. And there's more emotional misogyny present, which can be seen through the oppression of women. And in Gilead, every aspect of women's lives was controlled, and it was controlled by men. So women cannot move up in rank, they can only move down. And also their position and rank in society was only based on their ability to reproduce. And it's satirical because in usual systems you are given incentives to produce and work harder to become higher up in the scale. However, here Atwood is showing a different system to comment and critique on how the system should be reversed. The third aspect of satire is mass commercialization, and mass commercialization involves being introduced to large companies in commercial industries such as big brands like McDonald's, food chains, and shopping brands. Atwood uses this juxtaposition between America and Gilead to introduce ideas that pose the question of what if. What if the audience lives didn't have the mass commercialization they have? The last aspect of satire are environmental issues. So the dystopian society of Gilead is focused around the fact that there was a natural disaster which caused nuclear power plants to be damaged and leak nuclear waste. This is important as women are sent there if they are infertile, as Gilead saw them as being unnecessary and therefore sent them to the colonies. And that's where the nuclear spillage was, and where they eventually died. And Atwood amplified this natural disaster in order to allow the audience to understand how cruel Gilead really was to women.
Illusions. There are different kinds of illusions. The first we're going to talk about is religious illusion. This is important because Gilead is a society built on religious principles. This means that it stores names that reference the Old Testament, such as lilies of the field, milk and honey, all flesh. This shows how they abandoned the old names of the stores. They all suggest abundance in food, when in reality there were limited quantities of food. This magnifies how vital religion and religious beliefs were in the society of Gilead. This allows the audience to recognize that there were biblical references in the daily life routines, amplifying how important religion was to them.
Okay, there are also historical illusions which allow Atwood to establish the importance of power and hierarchy. So firstly, the commanders, they show the dynasties in China. Then there are the eyes, which symbolize the Nazis. Then there are the wives, and they by the Virgin Mary, and there's also the biblical reference there, of course. There's also the unwomen, and they also symbolize Nazi Germany as a whole. All these illusions show how versatile and adaptable the novel is. It allows Atwood to show her idea of a dystopian future are similar to past events, and that she believes will inevitably occur again in the future as well.
So next we're going to talk about the themes, motifs, and symbols in The Handmaid's Tale. So the first symbol is the color red. And as we previously stated when talking about the significance of Offred's name, we pointed out the fact that all handmaids had to wear red dresses that cover their entire bodies. And the red symbolizes fertility, which is the primary function of the handmaids. And it also represents the childbirth and the menstrual cycle, which are correlated to fertility. The significance of red can be traced back to the scarlet letter worn by adulteress Hester Prynne, and this can be linked to the handmaids as they are having sex with their commanders who are married. The commanders' wives frequently call the handmaids in Gilead sluts, and them wearing red is therefore sinful, and a symbol that they should be ashamed of themselves. The color red has a significant impact on the audience, as it is something that is frequently brought up, which allows the readers to become familiar with the symbol, and it is also a symbol that is very contradictory within itself, in the sense that it symbolizes fertility, which is good for women in Gilead. However, it also symbolizes adultery and sinfulness.
The second symbols are the eyes. The eyes are the secret police of Gilead. Being called the eyes is intended to make people in Gilead feel uncomfortable, as if they are always being watched. The symbol allows Atwood to anchor and amplify the fact that Gilead is always watching over everyone, and that they have control over everyone. To a certain extent, it can even make readers feel uncomfortable, as if they're being watched over. The third theme, the regime of Gilead was formed because of the dramatically low birth rates, and therefore its main goal was reproduction. The only way to reproduce is through women, so the society knew that they had to control all the women in order to make the most significant impact on the birth rate. Therefore, from the creation of Gilead, women were seen as tools and political instruments. This amplifies the fact that women were treated as objects and that they had no rights. It also gives the audience a greater sense of how vital women were, but at the same time how they were not valued for their roles in society.
The next theme is language equals power. So this links back to the satire of gender inequality and women not being allowed to read or write. It also connects to Gilead believing that language equals power, and therefore women are not allowed access to things that they can read, as it will give them power, which is not what the society wants. The society wants women to be stripped of their rights and any power they may have had. And this again amplifies how oppressive and controlling Gilead was, and gives the audience another perspective on how controlling they were. So the last theme is causes of complacency and freedom to versus freedom from. So Offred remembers her mother saying that it is truly amazing what people can get used to, as long as there are very few compensations. And even though women are in this oppressed society, Gilead makes it seem as though the little freedom they do have is a lot to them. This makes the audience realize how even when you have nothing, the little things make the biggest difference. And more specifically in Gilead, it shows the audience how the society was brainwashing the women to think that that what they were being given was a gift or a favor. Women in general support Gilead's existence by willingly participating in it. There were few rebels in the book besides Moira and Offred's mother, and these two people, in comparison to Offred, show that she was quiet and not rebellious. This makes the audience expand and question why Offred didn't rebel against the regime. Was she afraid? Was she brainwashed? Did she actually enjoy being in Gilead?
Thank you for watching!